Tariq Al Masari had wealth, a loving wife, and the respect of Dubai's elite until his secret affair with Leena Qadir, his best friend's daughter, ignited a chain of betrayal that ended in murder. Yusuf Qadir trusted Tariq with his business, his friendship, and his only daughter, until the day he uncovered the ultimate betrayal and vanished into the night with revenge in his heart. Samira Al Masari lived a picture-perfect life, unaware that behind closed doors, her husband was tearing it apart with the one girl she treated like family. Each of them had everything to lose, and by the end, they did. Tariq Al Masari was the kind of man people envied from a distance. At 42, he had carved out a reputation in Dubai's upper circles as a self-made business magnate with a spotless record. His luxury real estate ventures were booming, his name often seen in glossy magazines, and his social calendar filled with elegant galas and charity events. His home, nestled in the quiet opulence of Jumeirah, reflected his success. To the outside world, Tariq was the embodiment of discipline, grace, and loyalty, a devoted husband to Samira, a proud father, and a trusted friend to many. But what glittered in public masked a deepening void in private. Something inside him had grown restless. The change began subtly when Leena Qadir returned to Dubai after completing her studies in London. At 22, Leena was radiant, full of confidence and curiosity about life. She was the only daughter of Yusuf Qadir, Tariq's childhood friend and longtime business associate. Their families had shared decades of friendship, holidays, and milestones. Tariq had known Leena since she was a child, but when she stepped into his home that evening for a family dinner, something shifted in the atmosphere. She was no longer the shy little girl he remembered, but a graceful young woman whose presence seemed to disturb the calm order of his world. It started with harmless conversations, casual exchanges during family gatherings, and long glances that lingered too long. Tariq convinced himself it was just admiration, a fleeting emotion. But the more time they spent together, the harder it became to maintain the boundaries that once seemed natural. She seemed to enjoy his attention, and he began making excuses to see her, helping with her job search, inviting her to his office under the guise of mentorship. Leena, flattered and intrigued, didn't resist. What began as subtle tension turned into a secret affair hidden behind closed doors and darkened car windows. Tariq knew what he was risking. His marriage to Samira had been strong, stable, and built on years of partnership and mutual respect. But lately, that relationship had grown cold, dominated by routine and silences. Samira had always carried herself with elegance and restraint. She never pried, never questioned him, even when his late-night meetings became frequent and his phone habits changed. Tariq assumed he was being careful, but the emotional distance between them was growing too large to ignore. Leena, on the other hand, offered something electric. With her, he felt younger, seen, desired. She listened to him in ways Samira hadn't for years, and he gave in completely, justifying every wrong move as a response to emotional starvation. They began meeting at boutique hotels on the edge of the city, in parking garages, and even in the secluded corners of his own beach house when Samira was away. Each encounter deepened the deception, yet neither showed any sign of stopping. Leena believed she had awakened something in him, and Tariq believed he had found a second chance at passion. But things were never as hidden as they seemed. One of Tariq's neighbors once noticed Leena entering the villa when Samira was abroad. He didn't say anything, thinking it was a visiting relative. A family driver once saw Tariq dropping Leena off late at night in a different car. Again, no one questioned him. Dubai's elite circles had an unspoken code. What happened in private stayed there, unless it turned into scandal. And scandal was slowly creeping toward them like a shadow they didn't notice until it was too late. While the city basked in sunlit glamour, A storm was quietly brewing behind the closed doors of the Al Masari household. Tariq thought he was in control, carefully balancing two lives, but cracks were forming in places he hadn't anticipated. Every lie, every stolen hour, every moment spent away from his wife and family was building towards something inevitable. And as the days passed, what began as a dangerous thrill was now a ticking clock counting down toward disaster. Leena Qadir had always grown up around affluence and connections, but she had never felt truly seen until Tariq Al Masari. His attention was intoxicating. She wasn't blind to the danger, but it made her feel powerful. He wasn't just an older man, he was a symbol of success, charm, and quiet authority. She told herself it wasn't love, not in the fairy tale sense, but it felt like control in a world where she had always been the one expected to obey. For the first time, she held influence over someone others admired. And she wasn't ready to let that go. As the affair deepened, Leena grew bolder. What had started with secret meetings became a routine. She would receive cryptic messages instructing her where to meet. Sometimes it was in the corner of a rooftop restaurant, other times in the guesthouse of a property Tariq owned but rarely visited. They spoke in codes, deleted chats, and took precautions. But no precaution is ever enough when the stakes are so high. Tariq, meanwhile, was living in mental disarray. His business still ran smoothly. His outer image never cracked, but internally, he was trapped between obligation and obsession. He had begun avoiding events where both families would be present. Yusuf would call and suggest dinners, but Tariq declined more frequently. He didn't want to be in the same room with both Leena and Yusuf. The guilt would choke him. And yet, when Leena would call, his restraint would collapse like sand slipping through fingers. Yusuf noticed the shift in Tariq's behavior, but his trust was absolute. He attributed it to business stress, or perhaps some marital tension. He never imagined that his daughter could be involved in something so destructive. His own relationship with Leena had become strained. She was secretive, often out late, unwilling to share details about her day. He chalked it up to growing pains, post-university freedom, and didn't push her further. The reality was far more sinister than he could ever imagine. At home, Samira remained quiet but observant. She had been raised in a culture that taught women to preserve the household image above all else. But she wasn't naive. Late-night texts that stopped when she walked in, business trips that didn't align with calendar meetings, and a strange perfume on a shirt that wasn't hers. These small signs accumulated until the truth became hard to deny. She didn't speak of her suspicions out loud. Instead, she watched. She waited. Leena started to shift as well. What she once enjoyed as a thrilling secret began to wear her down. She wanted more. She didn't want to be a hidden part of Tariq's life anymore. She started asking him uncomfortable questions. Would he ever leave Samira? Would he ever tell her father the truth? Each time he gave vague promises, she became more anxious. She wanted to be seen, validated, and claimed. The secrecy was no longer romantic. It was suffocating. Tariq, caught between a possessive lover and a suspicious wife, began to unravel. He still clung to the fantasy that he could juggle both lives. That somehow time would solve everything. That maybe Leena would tire of him, or Samira would remain passive. But the storm was closing in, and he didn't even realize how much of his life was being watched. A family driver who had worked for them for years began noticing the inconsistencies. A neighbor once saw Leena leaving the villa when Samira was out of town. The private investigator Samira had quietly hired was piecing together every move Tariq made. A timeline of betrayal was forming, one that wouldn't remain hidden for long. Leena, increasingly frustrated, began pushing back. She hinted that she might tell her father. She accused Tariq of using her. She demanded clarity. Tariq, fearing exposure, tried to placate her with more lies, but lies have a short life. The once thrilling affair had now become a battlefield, and none of them were prepared for how far it would spiral. All it would take was one small revelation to tear the entire illusion apart. And that moment was approaching faster than any of them expected. The truth often arrives in fragments, and for Samira Al Masari, it began with the accidental discovery of a message that wasn't meant for her eyes. It happened late one evening while Tariq was in the shower. His phone buzzed repeatedly, and instinct took over. What she saw wasn't just suspicious, it was unmistakably damning. A message from Leena, affectionate in tone and far too familiar. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was a violation of everything she thought her life stood upon. The world she had built, the image she had protected, began to crack in silence. But Samira wasn't impulsive. She didn't scream, didn't confront. Instead, she chose precision. Over the next few days, she pretended nothing was wrong. Her expression didn't change, her routines remained intact, but every move was calculated. She began keeping tabs, making quiet notes of times, dates, and odd behavior. She went through bank statements, scanned call logs, and paid attention to the rhythm of his life like never before. It didn't take long for her to identify patterns. What she suspected turned into confirmation. She hired a private investigator under a fake name. Discreet, expensive, and effective. Within 2 weeks, the investigator had compiled damning evidence photographs of Tariq and Leena at a hotel near the marina, timestamps from hidden cameras, even video footage of Leena entering Tariq's private office on a Sunday when no one else was around. The truth was undeniable. But what broke Samira's heart wasn't just her husband's betrayal. It was the face of the girl in those photos. Leena, the daughter of their dearest friends, the girl she had once baked birthday cakes for and called her own. She couldn't keep the secret any longer. The weight was crushing her. One evening, she called Yusuf Qadir and asked to meet alone. She didn't explain, didn't offer a reason, just asked him to come. They sat in her garden as the call to prayer echoed in the distance. She said nothing. At first, just handed over a folder. Photos, reports, screenshots, all carefully arranged by the investigator. Yusuf flipped through them in disbelief, his face changing color with each turn of the page. At first, he didn't speak. Then his hand began to shake. He stood up, folder still in hand, and walked out without saying a word. Tariq was unaware that his world was disintegrating behind his back. He spent that day with Leena, promising her things he couldn't deliver. She had grown more restless, more demanding. She told him she was tired of hiding, tired of being second. She hinted that if he didn't take action soon, she might reveal everything herself. Tariq tried to calm her, offering vague reassurances. He never imagined that the damage had already been done. Yusuf didn't go home that night. He drove aimlessly through Dubai, his thoughts consumed with rage and humiliation. The betrayal cut deeper because it came from Tariq, the man he had trusted with his business, his family, his daughter. He considered every option. He thought of confronting his daughter, but the images were already burned into his mind. He thought of going to the police, but what crime had been committed? A moral crime, yes, but not a legal one. At least not yet. By morning, he had made a decision. He called Tariq's office, but Tariq wasn't there. He called his assistant, who said he had taken the day off. What Yusuf didn't know was that Tariq had taken Leena to a property he kept on the outskirts of the city, an isolated beach house, meant for private getaways. It was the same house the private investigator had tracked days earlier. The following night, Tariq didn't return home. His phone went unanswered. Samira, already on edge, contacted the investigator again. Hours passed. Then a call came from the authorities. Tariq's luxury car had been found abandoned on a dirt road outside Al Marmoum Desert. The engine was off, doors locked, and the car was clean. There was no sign of struggle. But something felt wrong. As the investigation began, one thing was clear. The disappearance wasn't an accident, and it wasn't random. Someone had orchestrated it, with intention. The betrayal that had once lived in silence had now erupted into something far more dangerous. Something that could no longer be hidden. The search for Tariq Al Masari quickly escalated from a missing person case to a potential homicide investigation. The discovery of his luxury vehicle in such an isolated, desolate area raised immediate suspicions. It wasn't just the location that disturbed investigators. It was the unsettling lack of evidence inside. The car was too sterile, too perfectly wiped. No fingerprints, no signs of forced entry, no personal belongings. It felt staged, like a performance meant to erase the truth. And that only fueled more questions. Detective Kareem Harb, a seasoned investigator known for his meticulous attention to detail, was assigned to lead the case. From the moment he arrived at the scene, he sensed this wasn't an ordinary disappearance. The circumstances, the social status of the missing man, and the rumors that had already started to swirl pointed to something far darker than a robbery or accident. He ordered a full sweep of the surrounding desert area, drone surveillance, and dogs brought in to trace any possible scent. For days, the team combed the dunes, braving scorching heat and biting winds. Then, 5 days after the car was found, they uncovered a shallow grave half a kilometer away. Inside it was the body of Tariq Al Masari. The corpse was partially decomposed, but the cause of death was clear. Blunt force trauma to the skull and defensive wounds on his arms and hands. Whoever killed him had fought him closely and violently. It wasn't a clean assassination. It was personal. The kind of killing born from emotion, rage, betrayal, or revenge. News of the discovery sent shockwaves through Dubai's elite. The media erupted with headlines, each more sensational than the last. Rumors of an affair, betrayal, and family scandal spread like wildfire. Samira Al Masari remained silent, refusing interviews and declining to appear publicly. Her attorney released a simple statement: the family is cooperating fully with the investigation. But behind closed doors, Samira knew the pieces were already in motion. And one name stood at the center of all of it: Yusuf Qadir. When detectives visited Yusuf's residence, they found the house locked and abandoned. His phone was switched off, his passport gone. None of his employees or close associates had seen or heard from him in days. Leena, when questioned, claimed to have no knowledge of his whereabouts. But something in her behavior struck Detective Harb as unusual. She appeared hollow, emotionally distant, and when asked about her relationship with Tariq, she froze. She didn't confirm or deny. She simply asked for the questioning to stop. A deeper investigation into phone records and financial data confirmed what Samira and the private investigator had already exposed: hundreds of messages between Tariq and Leena, travel records showing they were often in the same place at the same time, surveillance images capturing intimate moments that told a story words could not. Detective Harb pieced together a timeline. Yusuf discovers the affair. He meets with Samira, receives the evidence, and within 48 hours, Tariq disappears. The motive was there. So was the opportunity. But finding Yusuf had now become the priority. A manhunt was launched. Alerts were sent to all ports of exit, including private airports. His image was circulated internationally. Meanwhile, Leena's world began to collapse. Friends distanced themselves. University peers whispered behind her back. Social media turned venomous. She deactivated all accounts, stopped going out, and eventually checked herself into a private psychiatric facility for mental distress. Pressure of the scandal, the guilt, the loss, it had become too much for her to carry. Public opinion split rapidly. Some blamed Leena, calling her the root of the tragedy. Others blamed Tariq, the older man who should have known better. But everyone agreed on one thing: Ysef Kadir had disappeared with the truth. The death of Tariq wasn't just a murder, it was the result of a chain reaction sparked by lies, betrayal, and secrets that had festered in the shadows for too long. Detective Harb pushed forward with the case, determined not to let it go cold. His instincts told him Yusuf was still alive, hiding, waiting. But justice, no matter how slow, had a way of finding those who tried to outrun it. And with each passing day, the chase grew more intense, leading them closer to the man whose pain had turned into vengeance. Months passed, but the memory of Tariq Al Masari's murder remained raw. Dubai's glittering skyline seemed dimmed by the shadow of the scandal. A respected man murdered. A trusted friend vanished. A young woman shattered. Yet justice had not yet found its way to the one who had orchestrated the bloodshed. The case remained open but stagnant. Leads went cold, tips were empty, and the media slowly moved on to other stories. Only Detective Kareem Harb remained obsessed. To him, this case wasn't just about solving a crime, it was about restoring balance to a world torn apart by deceit. The breakthrough came unexpectedly from a small village in northern Turkey. Interpol flagged a passport match at a local checkpoint outside Trabzon. A man using a forged identity had drawn suspicion while attempting to open a bank account. When authorities arrived, he tried to flee but was caught after a short chase. Fingerprints confirmed his identity. Yusuf Qadir had been found. He was immediately extradited to Dubai, where a storm of media and public attention awaited. Reporters filled the court steps as Yusuf arrived in handcuffs, gaunt and silent. The trial began within weeks. The prosecution presented a compelling case: motive, opportunity, and undeniable evidence of flight. The defense had little to counter with. Yusuf refused to speak for the first few days of the trial, staring blankly as evidence was displayed: photos of Tariq and Leena, records of meetings, travel, and surveillance. But on the sixth day of the trial, Yusuf broke his silence out in a calm, unshaken voice. He admitted to killing Tariq. He explained how the betrayal from a man he called his brother had broken something inside him. He spoke not with rage but with sorrow, describing the pain of discovering that his daughter had been manipulated, that his trust had been destroyed. He called the murder a moment of pure emotional blindness. His confession sent a wave of silence across the courtroom. There was no justification in the eyes of the law, but to many, his pain was undeniable. Leena was not called to testify. She remained at the psychiatric facility, receiving treatment for what doctors described as severe emotional trauma and depressive episodes. She was never charged with any crime, as the investigation concluded that she had not played a role in Tariq's death. Still, her name was forever stained in the court of public opinion. Samira Al Masari attended the trial every day, but never once looked at Yusuf. Her face remained stoic, unreadable. She had filed for divorce shortly after Tariq's death and had since moved to Morocco under a new identity. She spoke only once, in a written statement to the court. In it, she said, "This tragedy began with silence and secrets. May it end with truth and accountability." The court sentenced Yusuf Qadir to 20 years in prison. The sentence divided the public. Some called it too light for murder. Others saw it as appropriate, given the emotional context. Yusuf accepted the judgment without reaction. He did not appeal. Detective Harb closed the case with mixed emotions. Justice had been served, but the emotional wreckage remained. 3 families destroyed. A friendship that had spanned decades reduced to betrayal. A young woman left to rebuild her life alone. And beneath it all, a chilling reminder of how quickly desire, jealousy, and silence could spiral into bloodshed. Villa in Jumeirah was sold quietly. The Al Masari name disappeared from social circles. Leena, under a different name, relocated to Europe, where she attempted to restart her life far from the headlines. Yusuf served his time quietly, never granting interviews or speaking of the past again. The story became legend in Dubai's elite circles, A whispered tale of trust destroyed and lives unraveled. And though the city moved forward, the tragedy lingered like an echo, a warning of what happens when boundaries are crossed and secrets are left to rot in the dark.